Have you ever asked yourself, why am I so exhausted when nothing serious has even happened? Here's the thing, your energy doesn't disappear in big, dramatic events. It leaks away silently through small, invisible cracks, a lingering fear, an unbalanced relationship, an emotion you keep shoving down, or just the constant pressure to seem okay when you're really not. Carl Jung once said something that hits different. The deepest kind of fatigue doesn't come from physical work. It comes from living disconnected from your soul. When your mind, emotions, and actions stop lining up, that's when energy starts to dissolve. You don't even have to do anything wrong to feel completely drained. It's enough to live too long without being true to who you actually are, where your soul gets forgotten in all the noise of responsibilities, expectations, and the roles you think you need to play to be loved. Today, we're diving into the energy drainers Carl Jung described, the invisible mechanisms quietly stealing your life force without you even realizing it. And more importantly, you'll learn how to plug each leak so you can get back to feeling powerful, clear, and free. Not just existing, but truly living. Subscribe to this channel for more self-awakening content. Ready to look directly at where your energy is going and take it back? Number 1. Living against your soul. Ever felt tired no matter how much you sleep? Not the normal kind of tired from working too hard, but that deep, unexplainable exhaustion, like someone's draining your life force drop by drop until there's just an empty shell left. You still smile, still talk, still function, but inside, nothing's left. Jung called this the invisible leak. And here's the twist, it doesn't come from other people. It comes from within you when you live against your own soul. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. But most people spend their entire lives doing the exact opposite, using all their energy to avoid becoming themselves. It starts innocently. You begin acting not because you're fake, but because you want to be loved, accepted, safe. You smile when you want to cry. You say, I'm fine, while your soul is breaking. At first, you think it's just a thin layer, a temporary mask for social situations. But over time, that layer hardens and thickens. You forget who you were before you had to wear it. You become the version the world wants, the reliable employee, the good daughter, the one who never complains. The world calls it maturity. Jung called it self-alienation, being estranged from your true self. Maybe you stayed in a job you stopped loving years ago because it's secure. Or you're in a relationship that dims your light because you're terrified of being alone. Or you've swallowed your true feelings 1,000 times just to keep the peace. Each time you do this, a piece of your soul quietly leaves. You don't burn out from work. You burn out from pretending. Your body starts signaling. Insomnia, anxiety, this weird fatigue with no clear cause. That's your soul's language saying, I don't want to live like this anymore. Jung explained that humans have two energy flows, outward and inward. When you live authentically, they harmonize. But when you act against your intuition and true values, you waste energy resisting yourself. Think of it like forcing a river to flow backward. It still flows, but it gets weaker and weaker until it dries up. Humans work the same way. When we live against our creative, truthful nature, our life force slowly fades. People talk endlessly about positive energy and high frequency these days. But few mention that fake positivity, forced happiness, forced optimism is one of the fastest ways to drain yourself. Because you can't heal by pretending not to hurt. Everything you repress will quietly steal your energy to keep itself hidden. Jung said, what you resist persists. And what you pretend not to feel, fear, loneliness, pain, becomes these small leaks constantly draining you. Keeping everything bottled up isn't a strength. It's slow soul bleeding. Want to know where your energy is leaking? Ask yourself, where am I forcing myself just to exist? Where do I say yes while my heart screams no? Where am I performing just to be accepted? The answers show you exactly where your energy is leaving. And here's the good news. You don't need to gain energy from somewhere else. You just need to stop betraying your soul. One honest word, one authentic action, one true choice. That's enough for energy to start flowing back. If you're tired, it's not necessarily because you're weak. Maybe it's because you've been fighting yourself for way too long. Number 2. Suppressing your shadow. There's a kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from hiding too long. When you try to always be kind while you're actually angry, smile while you're hurt, Nod along when inside you're screaming. Outwardly, you seem calm, but inside, there's this reversed current, energy trapped between the parts you show the world and the parts you bury deep. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." The shadow is everything you deny about yourself. The ugly feelings, the unacceptable desires, the parts you're terrified others will see. You hide them to be loved, to fit in. But every time you repress a part of yourself, you don't erase it. You just push it into the basement of your unconscious, where it continues to exist and consume energy to stay hidden. In Jungian psychology, the shadow isn't evil, it's just forgotten. Ever notice how certain people annoy you beyond reason? That might be your own shadow reflected through them. What you despise in others often mirrors what you haven't accepted in yourself. Maybe you get irritated when people boast, but deep down you crave recognition too. Or you can't stand weakness in others, but that's really your own vulnerability, asking for compassion. The shadow doesn't want to harm you. It wants to be acknowledged. And when you refuse to see it, it finds other ways to appear through illness, through dreams, or reactions you can't control. A woman once shared that she was always the helper, always there for everyone, yet she was constantly sick, couldn't sleep, and sometimes burst into tears for absolutely no reason. In therapy, she discovered the truth she'd never said aloud. She was angry that no one cared about her feelings. She'd repressed that anger for years because she believed good people shouldn't be selfish. That repression had been draining her for years. Jung said, "One does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." You can't heal by only focusing on your light. You have to look into your darkness, because that's where your trapped energy lives. When you finally face it, that energy gets released. Anger transforms into power. Fear becomes sensitivity. Envy turns into inspiration. Picture a deep basement inside you. Every ignored emotion, every avoided memory gets thrown down there. The fuller it gets, the more energy you have to use standing guard at the door, making sure nothing bursts out. The exhaustion doesn't come from the basement existing. It comes from guarding it every single day. And one day, when you're too tired to guard it anymore, the lid blows open. That's when you explode in anger, sink into depression, or feel like life has no meaning. The solution isn't tightening the lid. It's going down into that basement, listening to your darkness, asking, what do you need? Why do you hurt? Acknowledging emotion doesn't make you weak. It makes you real. When you say, I'm angry instead of I'm fine, you stop the leak. When you admit, I'm scared, you stop wasting energy pretending to be brave. When you whisper, I'm sad, your soul breathes again. Don't fear your darkness. Walk into it slowly, honestly. What you've been avoiding might just be the power you've been searching for all along. Number 3, the projection game. Jung said, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. If you don't realize this, you'll keep fighting, believing you're battling others when really you're battling yourself. Think about Anna, a successful 3-5-year-old woman who had it all. Yet she felt strangely triggered by a younger colleague, confident, outspoken, always getting attention. She's so arrogant, Anna would complain, always wants to be the center of attention. But in therapy, when asked, why does that bother you so much? She went silent. Then she cried. She realized she used to be like that, confident, expressive, unafraid to speak up. But fearing rejection, she dimmed her own light. Now that the radiant part of her was living in someone else, and every time she saw it, she felt resentment, because it was the part she'd abandoned in herself. That's the projection game. When you haven't faced the disowned parts of yourself, you see them in others and react to them. Your energy disperses outward in the struggle against that reflection, instead of flowing inward, where actual healing could happen. Jung said, the meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed. When someone provokes a strong reaction in you, it's not just their issue, it's a chemical reaction of souls. They're touching the part of you that's not yet integrated. Think of the last time you felt really hurt. Maybe your partner was distant, or someone said something that pierced your heart. If you look deeper, that pain is rarely about them. It's about something much older, maybe a childhood memory when you felt unseen, unworthy, unloved. When someone touches that old wound, your inner child wakes up, and you react not as an adult, but as that child who once trembled. When you criticize someone as selfish, maybe you're repressing your own desire to prioritize yourself. When you call someone lazy, maybe you're exhausted but afraid to rest. When you resent someone as arrogant, maybe it's the part of you that desperately wants to be acknowledged. Projection is how the ego defends itself from seeing what it doesn't want to accept. But it's also one of the greatest drains of energy. Jung called it the war of mirrors. When we lack the courage to look inward, we just reflect and react endlessly. Each loop drains another piece of vitality. Freedom from projection isn't about forgiving others. It's about realizing every strong reaction is a mirror. Ask yourself, what exactly in them triggers me so much? What part of me feels threatened? True freedom doesn't come when others stop hurting you. It comes when you stop giving them the power to define your emotions. Number 4. When your body speaks, Jung said, the body is merely the visible aspect of the soul, and the soul is the psychological experience of the body. A friend of mine was this driven entrepreneur, disciplined, always on, working 16-hour days. Everyone admired her energy. Until one morning, she couldn't get out of bed. No injury, no diagnosis, just a complete shutdown. Doctors said she was fine, but in therapy, when asked, "How do you feel when you're not doing anything?" she burst into tears. She realized she'd never truly rested. She only paused her body while her mind kept racing to prove her worth. When the soul is neglected, the body becomes not just a vessel but a language, and exhaustion is how the soul speaks. Back pain, headaches, insomnia, numbness, unexplained anxiety. They're all messages from your unconscious. Jung believed that when life energy gets blocked when we live, feel, or rest unnaturally, that energy seeks another outlet, symptoms. The body remembers what the conscious mind tries to forget. When you suppress emotions, your nervous system stays in fight or flight mode. Cortisol rises, sleep quality drops, and energy can't regenerate. Your body is your soul speaking in biological language. When your shoulders tighten, it might be a burden you haven't shared. When your heart races, maybe it's fear of being exposed. When your stomach knots up, perhaps it's resistance to some truth. Yet most people try to fix the body without listening to it. They take pills, meditate, change diets, but rarely pause to ask, why does my body have to tense this much? Jung believed every symptom is symbolic. Instead of asking, how do I stop this pain, he'd ask, what is this pain trying to tell me? Someone with chronic back pain might be carrying emotional burdens. Someone with a lump in their throat might be holding back words they need to say. Someone with stomach issues might be swallowing feelings they can't acknowledge. Once you understand the message, the energy trapped in the symptom begins to release. Not through medication, but through awareness. If you're exhausted for no clear reason, start with your body. Ask, what am I feeling right now? Maybe there's tightness in your chest, heat in your belly, or this nameless heaviness. Don't dismiss it. That's the doorway to your unconscious. Balance doesn't come from working less or resting more. It comes from being present in every act. Eat when you're truly hungry. Sleep when you're truly tired. Cry when you're truly sad. When you return to your natural rhythm, body and soul reunite, and energy no longer splits between what I should do and what I feel. To honor your body is to honor your soul. And when the soul is heard, energy doesn't have to scream through pain anymore. It flows back softly, but steadily. Number 5, losing yourself in comparison. Jung said, the shoe that fits one person pinches another. No recipe for living suits all cases. Yet we live in an age where everyone's trying to wear the same pair of shoes. The shoes of success, perfection, and approval. Comparison isn't just social behavior. It's an unconscious mechanism. It's what happens when your ego loses its personal compass and falls into what Jung called the collective persona, the social mask of conformity. That's when you stop living as I and start living as everyone. You no longer ask, does this make me feel alive, but what will people think of me? Think of Lara, a talented designer who once spent hours drawing just for the joy of it. But when social media became the measure of worth, she started comparing. That person has 10,000 likes. That one gets invited to speak. What about me? She stopped creating for love and started creating for validation. She changed her style to fit trends, wrote to please algorithms, and designed to impress. One day, she looked at her newest work and felt nothing. It's beautiful, she said, but it has no soul. Jung called this collective hypnosis. When the mind is governed by the collective image, the individual loses instinct. Like thousands of fish swept by the same current, each thinks it's swimming, but it's just being carried. Your energy doesn't fade because you're weak. It fades because you're no longer you. Comparison is the subtlest energy leak because society disguises it as motivation. But motivation built on comparison doesn't arise from the soul. It arises from fear. Fear of being left behind. Fear of being unseen. Fear of not being enough. Remember Marilyn Monroe? She once said, "They only see me as Marilyn, but they don't know Norma Jean." Norma Jean was her real name, the girl who loved reading and dreamed of simple love. But as the world fell in love with Marilyn, the blonde hair, dazzling smile, sensual walk, she had to become that character to stay loved, to stay relevant. And at the height of fame, she was utterly exhausted. Not from lack of success, but from sustaining it. The spotlight doesn't just illuminate, it burns, especially when you've lost yourself in its glow. Comparison also breeds the illusion of lack. You look around and see others as prettier, richer, happier, and immediately feel less. But according to Jung, the self can't be measured by someone else's yardstick. Each soul has its own path. Living by someone else's map doesn't just mislead you, it drains you, because you're walking against your own inner compass. How do you escape the comparison trap? Not by forcing yourself to stop comparing, the mind will always observe and contrast, but by changing the question from, "Am I as good as them?" to, "Am I being true to myself?" From, "Do I measure up?" to, "Am I living in alignment with my soul?" When the question changes, energy changes. When energy stops scattering, improving, or copying, it naturally gathers back, reconnecting to the original source. That's when you stop looking in the collective mirror and look within. And you'll see there's no path nobler than returning to yourself. Number 6. Fearing silence. Once you stop comparing and return to your soul's rhythm, you'll face something deeper. Silence. Have you noticed that modern people can endure loneliness but not silence? We play music while showering, scroll while eating, work in constant noise as if we're terrified that in silence we'll hear something we don't want to face. Jung called this the flight from the self. When someone can't sit quietly alone, it's not because they're busy. It's because they're afraid. Afraid of emptiness. Afraid of hearing inner voices. Afraid of having nothing to hold on to. Yet it's precisely in silence that the soul's real energy can return. I once knew a woman who was constantly in motion, good job, many friends, always doing something. Whenever anxiety rose, she'd fill it with activity. Cleaning, scrolling, meeting people. After a breakup, she tried meditation. Within 5 minutes, she jumped up, heart racing, thoughts flooding. What am I doing? I need to work, write emails. She couldn't sit still, not because of time, but because in silence, old fears emerged. Abandonment, loneliness. The echo of, "I'm not enough." To drown them out, she turned the music back on. That's how most of us drain energy, not from overwork, but from running from ourselves. Each time we flee silence, our energy gets pulled outward to sustain the noise, news, social media, endless chatter. The noisier the world, the emptier the soul. Think of your soul as a lake. When the surface is still, you can see the bottom: truth, memory, intuition. But when you keep stirring it with distractions and fear of stillness, the reflection disappears. You're left with only turbulence. Jung believed the unconscious doesn't speak in words, but in symbols, dreams, sensations, and intuitions. To hear them, you need space. In modern life, that space is rarer than gold. People treat silence as dead time, but in truth, it's the womb of renewal. Humans fear stopping because when you stop, you can't hide behind doing. You must face being, and that often hurts. In silence, the denied voices awaken. Loneliness, wounds, unmet desires. But Jung said, there is no coming to consciousness without pain. Silence isn't an escape, it's courage. It's like entering a place where you expect demons but find your forgotten soul. Each time you sit still, not fixing, not striving, not achieving, you allow energy to return. Because energy always flows toward awareness and away from resistance. Jung said, in each of us, there is another whom we do not know. Only in stillness can you meet that one, the original self, strong and serene. The world teaches you how to run, not how to stop. That's why most people live trapped in doing, achieving, proving as if their worth depended on speed and results. But only when you dare to pause in silence do you realize energy doesn't come from constant motion. It comes from presence. When you allow yourself to rest, to listen, to feel, the natural flow of energy begins restoring itself. Number 7. When suppressed emotions become toxic memories, have you ever noticed yourself overreacting to small things? A harmless comment stings your heart. A casual act wounds you deeply as if you felt it before. That's no coincidence. Jung called this the complex. When an old emotion hasn't been released, it doesn't die. It becomes a knot of energy trapped in the unconscious, waiting to release itself. Each time it's triggered, you think you're reacting to the present, but you're actually reliving the past. Jung wrote, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate." Unprocessed wounds become destiny because you're no longer controlling your energy, it's controlling you. I once heard about a woman named Naomi who described herself as too sensitive. A small remark from a coworker kept her awake at night. In relationships, if her partner didn't text for a few hours, she panicked. "I know I'm overreacting, but I can't help it," she said. Through therapy, she remembered her childhood. Her father would punish her with silence, not yelling or hitting, just days of cold withdrawal. She lived in terror of being ignored. Now, whenever someone was silent with her, that memory came alive. She wasn't afraid her boyfriend would leave. She feared the punishment of silence all over again. That's the loop of unhealed emotion. Suppressed feelings spin like backward whirlpools, keeping you stuck in the past. The more you try to forget, the stronger they grow because resistance itself fuels them. One day you realize you're not tired of people. You're tired of holding your past inside you. Jung believed energy has its own memory. It doesn't follow linear time like the mind does. To it, 10 years ago can still be right now. That's why when you recall an old wound, your body reacts as if it's happening again, heartbeat racing, stomach tightening, throat closing. You're not just remembering pain, you're re-experiencing it. Spending real energy on ghosts. Imagine holding a stone in your hand. Every unprocessed memory is another stone. You don't throw them away, you carry them, afraid to let go. Over time, your arm grows heavier. You can still walk, still work, but each step is harder. One day you ask, "Why am I so exhausted when I haven't done anything?" The answer, because you're carrying the past. In Jungian therapy, the goal isn't to forget, but to bring the unconscious into awareness. Jung believed that only when you face the memory directly can frozen energy be released. Close your eyes. Imagine meeting your younger self, the one who was hurt. Don't judge, don't run. Just listen and say, "I'm here now. I won't abandon you again." In that moment, the energy trapped in resentment begins to flow back. Freedom doesn't come from forgetting the past. It comes from no longer being ruled by it. Each time you pause instead of reacting, you untwist one coil of resentment. When you stop repeating old patterns, energy stops leaking. When you can look back without trembling, that's the sign you've reclaimed the energy once held hostage by the past. When you realize that energy isn't something to keep or boost, but the natural harmony between mind, emotion, and soul, you begin to feel a true return to yourself. Every suppressed, denied, or drained part, now named, heard, and healed. That's the path you're on. The journey of integrating all your parts so your energy no longer fragments. You don't need to become a stronger version of yourself. You don't need to stay positive all the time. You only need honesty with your emotions. To rest when tired, to be silent when needed, to look deeply within. Then energy stops being something that depletes. It becomes light, naturally flowing through every breath, thought, and choice. If this video made you feel a part of your energy returning, share it to spread Jungian awareness to others. And subscribe, because this journey has only just begun, the journey that helps you not only understand energy but embody it in its purest form. Silent, deep, luminous, and unshakable. Thank you for staying with me till the end. Do well to subscribe to this channel.